All right, so what I'll do here is kind of walk through the steps and processes of how to take your EC data once it's been sanitized and brought in as a feature class, all that kind of good stuff. You're ready to kind of work with it, and then turn that into a raster using either the topsoil, the subsoil, elevation, those kinds of things. So um, it's pretty straightforward. So what first thing I'm going to do is go over here to catalog, and I'm going to go to the toolbox, not toolbox that we're using for our tools, the precision irrigation tools, but the system toolbox here. And we'll go all the way down to the spatial analyst toolbox. And inside the spatial analyst toolbox, there's going to be an interpolation sub toolbox. And in there's going to be a tool, topo to raster. Okay, this takes any data point and any legal value, integer or floating, things like that value, and turns it into a raster. So we'll use it for topsoil, subsoil, slope, and then once we have slope, then we'll be able to create our not slope but elevation, our topo. Then we'll be able to create our slope and aspect from that one. But first we'll just create a raster. So I'll just double click topo to raster. First thing is I got to provide an input feature class, and that's going to be my EC data. This is for the star field, projected, ready to go. Now I got to define two parameters here. One, the field that I want to use to create the raster from, and so I can pick either the topsoil, the subsoil, or the height. This field is called height in meters. This is an older data set, so it may not reflect exactly what we have now in the new EC clean file, but let's just do height. And it'll be the same. Everything I do here will be the same for height, for subsoil, or topsoil. So it'll be the same process. Then under type, this is going to be a point feature class. So point elevation. So the point, each point, it represents the location that has the value that I want to use to create the raster from. You could also incorporate other pieces of information that can be used to help build this raster, like stream data or a boundary file or lakes or whatever it might be to help show this up. But in this case, it's just going to be point. And then make sure you're pointing to the right folder structure and the right file geodatabase to store your raster, and then come in here and call it anything you want. This one might call this star underscore topo. That's what we're going to build here. The tool automatically determines, based on the number of points in that feature set, what the output cell size would be and the extent, so I try not to mess with that any. If I do have a boundary that I want to go no further than that boundary, then I want to make sure that I use one of those other layers out there. If I have a boundary layer or something like that. Otherwise, use the extent. These other defaults are really good. Just leave everything the same. You can kind of tinker with some of these other variables, but the defaults are pretty straight on. The only one you want to change is this primary type of input data. This is not a contour line, right? We're dealing with spot elevation. And we're dealing with discrete locations with the values that we want to use in the analysis process. And so that's pretty much all I do at this point. And then when I'm ready, just hit OK. And it'll go through its process, and you'll see down here processing topo to raster. And when it's done, it'll come up and let's turn off our point, our EC data. And there's our raster with the elevation. And then at this point, you can do what you normally can do with going to the properties, symbology, either change it here, right? So unique and how many classifications and things like that. You know how to do that right now. Or you can use stretch, which sort of gives it sort of a continuous look and feel to the data. So we'll come down here to red and blue, hit apply. Now you'll see it sort of has that sort of continuous feel to the data set. But either way, you can use that to, let's just go back to classified, use 9, hit apply, or pick any other color you want to in here, and that's kind of shows our elevation. And with the identify tool, I can click anywhere on the map and I can get the height in this case meters or feet actually when we did the conversion, and so on and so forth. And that's how you can create your raster representation of either the elevation, which would be topo, or topsoil and or subsoil. So there you go.